Hello. This time around we discussing Parsha Balak. Well, it's a very interesting Parsha, like everything in Torah. So, and it follows the previous Parsha and the next Parsha. They all following in more or less chronological sequence, which is very unusual for the Torah, and because generally Torah does not follow the chronological historical events. However, this time around it does. So last Parsha, we finished with children of Israel basically conquering the land of Amorites, defeating King Sihon, the king of Amorites, and defeating King Og, the king of Bashan. And they were the two mighty neighbors of Moab. Now, this parsha begins with King Balak, who is the king of Moab, of the next neighboring nation, who fully understands that those Jews, they came over to conquer the land, and he fully understands that his kingdom, or basically his power, his personal power, is under huge threat. So, being basically having some power, some spiritual powers as well himself, he decides to approach the land of Midian and a specific person in there by the name Balaam, who was a famous non-Jewish prophet and sorcerer, and asked him to come and to curse the Jewish people. Why? Because he figured out that the whole power of Jewish people comes from God, from Hashem, and until he will not remove that Hashem's power from Jewish people so that people will not be supported by Hashem, he has got no chance to stand up to them. He has got no chance to win in physical battle because the spiritual side of the whole thing is not in his favor. So Balaam, the famous sorcerer, receiving the delegates from the king Balak, said to them, "Okay, I'm not sure. I don't know." So that night after their arrival, God appears to Balaam and tells him that you shall not curse my people, because they are blessed, and you will not go with those people inviting you to Balak. So Balaam tells the messengers the next morning that he cannot go, and they go back to Balak and transmit that message. They basically tell Balak, Balaam said that God forbade him to go with us. So Balak decided, no, this is a ploy, I know exactly what this guy is trying to do. He's trying to get a bit more out of me. So fine. So he sends to Balaam more prestigious messengers, and he promising him great riches in return for his services. He basically increased the price. We are negotiating. That's the whole thing. And once again, God appears to Balaam. And this time, God tells Balaam, okay, you want to go? You go. Fine. We will come back to that little point in a few seconds. But you can go providing that you will speak only the words which I, Hashem, I, God, will put in your mouth. Next morning, Balaam tells the delegates, the dignitaries who came over to him, yep, I will go with you. However, he did not tell them that Hashem told him to tell them that he will be able, if he goes with them, he will be able to use only the words which God will put into his mouth. He didn't say that. And then the whole story takes a very different shape. It twists around. Balaam saddles his donkey, his she donkey, and he goes on the way together with the dignitaries from Midian to Balak in order to help him and to curse the Jewish people. However, an angel from Hashem appears in front, in the middle of the road, right, which the donkey can see, but Balaam, the great sorcerer, the great prophet, cannot see. So it's a bit of a joke from Hashem, But anyway, so the donkey goes sidewise into the field, trying to go around the road, because there's an angel with a sword in his hand, drawn, ready to kill, and looks very, very dangerous. However, the Balaam, since he couldn't see the angel, so he beats up the donkey, the poor donkey, and forces it back on the road. So then Hashem moves things around such a way that the donkey, together with Balaam, appears between the two walls, between two fences. And the donkey has got nowhere to go, so it goes towards one wall and squashes the leg of Balaam, and Balaam beats it up again, and then there is another story. Eventually Hashem opens up Balaam's eyes and he can see the angel. But that happens only after the donkey started complaining. Suddenly the donkey started to speak. And the donkey says to Balaam, why are you beating me up? Because, I'm trying to save you, to protect you, because, I served you very well for many, many years during the day and, by the way, during the night. So Balaam is not a very clean person in terms of his sexual preferences. Balaam had a discussion with the angel, and the angel tells him, you're not behaving very nicely, and tells him that he is behaving towards the poor donkey as well. And he reminds him, the angel reminds him again, that he can say only what Hashem will tell him to say. So after this sort of very clear, humbling incident, right, Balaam arrives to Moab, where he is greeted by Balak. Balak builds 7 altars and offers sacrifices to God, and God basically talks to Balaam and dictates to him the words he should repeat to Balak and his ministers. And this is one of the most interesting statements where a negative personality, an evil personality, makes about Jewish people. And Balaam says the following: "From Aram, Balak the king of Moab has brought me, from the mountains of the east. Come, curse Jacob for me, and come invoke wrath against Israel. How can I curse whom God has not cursed? And how can I invoke wrath if the Lord has not been angered?" And Balaam then proceeds to shower Israelites with beautiful blessings and praises. And Balak gets very, very angry and because of those blessings. And Balaam reminds him that he can only say what God tells him to say. So Balak takes Balaam to another location, hoping that the new venue would be more amicable for him and be more negative towards the Jews. So they again build another altar and offer sacrifices, and again God dictates the words to Balaam, what to say. And Balaam says the following words: God does not look at the evil in Jacob, and he has seen no perversity in Israel, and the Lord his God is with Israel, and he has the king's friendship. So again, later on in the Torah, the entire process repeats again itself. And for the third time they build the altars, and for the third time the blessings come out from Balaam's mouth. How goodly are your tenants, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. God, who has brought them out of Egypt with the strength of his loftiness, he shall consume the nations which are his adversaries. Those who bless them shall be blessed, and those who curse them shall be cursed. At this point, Balak despairs, and and he is totally stressed, and he sends Balaam away. However, before Balaam left, the words which he said, I guess, that God is not angry with the Jewish people. I think that these words gave him another idea, which unfortunately has worked. What he says to Balak is, we could make them sin. And sexual immorality is one of the things, and idolatry. These are the things which will make God angry. So how about you send your best women, the most beautiful women, into the Jewish camp, basically build markets. They build markets, and they put in there different things for sale, and because Jewish people were going towards the land of Israel, so and a Jew always likes a bargain, so they put markets in there with all different things they're selling, and which were basically and the stalls were served by elderly women. However, when the Jewish men were coming over, to buy stuff, the elderly women would tell them, look, go in the back room. There is the real stuff, the good stuff. This is just for show we putting in there, but it's not very good quality. You go into the back room, and there you will see real stuff. What was in the back room, on top of the goods and things, gorgeous young girls who would offer themselves as prostitutes to the men. But the payment would be not the money. They didn't ask for money. They asked for them. They were providing their enjoyable sexual services, as well as food, and they were eating, and they were committing idolatry because they were praying to the Moab idols, to Baal Peor, which is in itself a very interesting aspect of how they were conducting their religious ceremonies. This is when a lot of men, particularly from the tribe of Shimon, sinned. And in the end of the parsha, we learn that the seduction basically resulted in a plague sent by God, and nobody basically knew what to do. And we will come to that in the next parsha. There is a lot of details associated with that. And the whole thing came to a pinnacle when Zimri, one of the princes of the tribe of Shimon, took a girl, she was a princess by the name Cosby, and I think from memory she was one of the daughters of Balak, no less than that. So how immoral were those people? They were prepared to send their daughters into prostitution in order simply to get the Jews to sin. So Zimri said to Moshe, you are married to a Midianite woman, Zipporah. She is a daughter of Midianite priest, Itra. And, who are you? What right you have got now to tell me not to have a sexual relationship with this girl? there is a lot of truth in that and a lot of untruth in that, because first of all, Moshe married Zipporah before receiving the Torah, not after, and obviously before receiving the Torah that was allowed. More than that, Zipporah went through conversion and she was a Jewish woman. However, what Zimri did, he took this Midianite girl, and they went publicly, as a public demonstration, they went into a tent in order to have a sexual relationship. And this is when the Pinchas, he was Aaron's grandson, and he was very upset, very indignant about this insult to Moshe, to all the Jewish sages, and most of all to Hashem. And he took a spear, hidden it under his cloak, went to the tent, which was actually guarded by people from tribe of Shimon, but he managed to get in, and he killed Zimri and Cosby with one hit of the spear. He just went right through both of them while they were having their sexual relationship. And that's the end of this parsha. So, a number of questions come up here. There are more questions than I've got hair on my head. But let's look at two of them. First of all, in the beginning, why Hashem initially tells Bilam not to go with the representatives from Balak, and then what Hashem changes his mind, and the next night he tells him, yes, you can go, but you will speak only the words which I will tell you. And then after he allowed him to go, when he goes on his donkey, he sends an angel with a sword, and the angel was ready to kill. So this is a contradiction. What is going on here? So if we look a little bit deeper here, we will find out the Midrash describes all of it. First of all, the first night when Hashem told Bilam that he cannot go, don't go, right? That was a straight order to a non-Jewish prophet telling him that you will not go, you should not go. But when Bilam asked again exactly the same question the next day with the new dignitaries arriving and all of this, that was a demonstration of his human freedom of will. Now, Hashem gave us people a freedom of will. And as a consequence of this, Hashem cannot prevent a human being from making the mistakes which he is about to make. So we are free to choose, particularly in the matters of spirituality, and this is a matter of spirituality right here. So Hashem doesn't change his mind. What has happened is because Bilam asked the same question second time around, Hashem set the rules for all humanity. Freedom of will exists for everybody. So Hashem, follows the same rules, his own rules. So he had no choice but to tell him, all right, fine, you want to go, you are dead, you are such a negative force, you're such a negative personality that you really want to curse the Jews, you really feel like it. So I'm telling you, you will say only the words which I will tell you to say. What Bilam did is, he didn't convey the second part of the God's message. He conveyed to the representative from Balak, the higher dignitaries, only that he was allowed to go now, but he didn't tell them in the first place that he can only say what God will ask him, will put into his mouth. And as a consequence of this, God decided to play a joke on him. This is the whole joke here with the donkey and with the angel. So what God does, he laughs about Bilam, because he tells him, all right, if you think you're trying to outsmart me, right? I will show you who is the boss here. So he plays a very funny situation on Bilam. He puts the angel in front and makes sure that the donkey can see much more than the so-called magician, prophet, soothsayer, and whatever, right? So, source, that he is the greatest sorcerer. That's the way he was presenting himself, right? And now suddenly the poor donkey can see much more than he can, right? Number one. In number two, when the donkey eventually started to speak, the donkey said far too much. The donkey said exactly what kind of relationship Bilam had with the donkey, first of all. And the other point is the donkey has shown to everybody, including those dignitaries, that she, donkey, actually can see much more than her master sitting on top of her. Yeah. So it was a very demeaning kind of situation. And this is why it appears on the surface that, God has changed his mind. No, God did not change his mind. It's the whole situation was played out because God followed the laws and rules which he set up for humanity anyway. So during one of his unintended blessings, because he wanted to curse the Jews, Bilam said the following words: "As I see them from the mountain tops, gaze on them from the heights, behold, it is a people that dwells alone, not reckoned among the nations." To many Jewish admirers and haters, critics alike, these words are the epitome of what the Jewish history is all about and the situation of Jewish people. People that stand alone in the history and in many respects are not following the general laws governing the fate of all the other nations. For Jews, in some respects, it's a sense of pride, as well as the consequence of our sorry history of thousands of years of discrimination and hatred. All sages, Jewish and non-Jewish, agree that all Jews are different. The question is how and why. The biblical answer is absolutely surprising and deep and profound. And I found these explanations in this book, which is Covenant and Conversations by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. And he provides an incredible explanation here. The Jewish chosenness as a privilege, it was and is a responsibility. The key verse here is the famous prophecy of Amos. "You alone have I singled out of all your of all the families of the earth, and this is why I will call you to account for all your iniquities." Amos 3:2. Where then did Jewish singularity lie? The clue lies in the precise wording of Balaam's blessing. "Behold, it is a people that dwells alone, for it was as a people that God chose the descendants of Abraham, as a people that he made a covenant with them at Mount Sinai, as a people that he rescued from Egypt and gave them laws and entered into their history. You will be to me, he said at Sinai, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." Judaism is the only religion to place God and at the center of the self-definition as a nation. Jews is the only nation whose very identity is defined in the religious terms. We are not identified by one language because we have got many. Hebrew, Ladina, Yiddish, you name it. Lushan Kodesh, So we had many languages over through the history of Jewish people. We are not defined by the specific geographic location even though there is a specific land of Israel which God rightfully gave us. But we were Jewish people before we entered the land of Israel, because we were defined by our set of moral and ethical standards given to us when we were receiving the Torah. Jewish people are the people who, from the very beginning, stood alone against everybody. Abraham stood alone against the whole world. There is no need to go that far. And even today, during 2,000 years of our history, our dispersion, Jews were the only people who, as a group, refused to assimilate, refused to be dominated by any other culture. And they showed that the nation does not need to be powerful or large in order to win God's favor. We are still representing only 0.2% of the world's population, but state of Israel and Jewish people are frequented in the news more than probably some of the big superpowers. They showed that God is not necessarily on the sides of the great empires or big battalions. They showed that a nation can be hated, persecuted, reviled, and yet still be loved by God. They showed that to every law of history there is an exception, and what the majority believes at any given moment is not necessarily true. Judaism is God's question mark against the conventional wisdom of the ages. It's not a comfortable fate to be alone, for Jewish people to dwell alone, but it's a challenging fate and very inspirational to have the responsibility to carry through the centuries of Jewish history, of the world history, to carry the knowledge and the spiritual connection to God. And one way or the other, it's you and I and many, many millions of other Jews around the world who are responsible to stand alone, to be proud of what we are and who we are, and to bring the light of Hashem to the other nations. I will see you next time in a very dramatic parsha called Pinchas. Goodbye.